Well, good morning to those of you watching online. I know we have like 40 or 50 people who are quarantined or can't be here, so hello, glad you're here. We miss you. Everybody can say hi. There you go. Well, this morning I want to talk about culture as it relates to RCC. And have you ever been to a local coffee shop and you want a small, but you order a tall? Or you want a large and you're like, can I get a venti mocha frap? Whatever. Why do we do that? Because they don't have venti at Dunkin' Donuts. They don't have tall. They have like large, medium, small. Why do we bring venti to places that do not have venti? And that is a sign of the effect that culture has on us. You see, the way and the language of Starbucks has been so ingrained in you that you subconsciously take it with you to places where it doesn't exist. It's almost a part of who you are now. And every organization has a culture, but even every church has a culture where you are bringing a way of seeing the world, a particular language, a particular feel to that organization. And culture is just quite simply how the room feels. It's when you come in here and you feel this otherworldly warmth. When somebody comes to you and hugs you so much you feel like your spine might snap. Like it's just such an intense hug. That warmth is a part of the culture. When you feel this indescribable buzz or excitement, like God is doing something here. That's culture. The zero tolerance between members who gossip about other members or slander another member. That's all culture. When you hear the entire congregation singing together in unison, as we really believe what's being said, like this thunder of voices, that's culture. And Ray Ortlund defines gospel culture as the shared experience of grace for the undeserving. The idea being that culture, gospel culture, is the gospel working its way out in how we do life together, practically. And obviously, in the Bible, the Apostle Paul cared a lot about theological statements and doctrine. But did you know he cared just as much about culture, about how the room feels? We saw this in 1 Timothy, in our series in the book of 1 Timothy a couple months ago, where he tells the church in Ephesus that the doctrine of the gospel must be protected. But he also says in that same letter that the church should feel like fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers. You know what that is? That's culture. It feels like family. He tells the church in Corinth that the gospel is of first importance. That's a doctrine issue. But he also says that when lost people, when unbelievers come to your gathering, they should not feel super weird. Hey, maybe let's not handle snakes or do other weird things that lost people would come in and be like, I'm good. That's culture. A culture inviting the people who are far from God. He told Peter in the book of Galatians that Peter's racism was not in step with the gospel. You see, Peter's doctrine was solid. You could quiz him about the gospel all day. He would pass a test. But the actual outworking of that gospel and the way he did life was lacking. People who were of a different ethnicity than him did not feel comfortable around him. That's culture. The idea being we can say all day that white people and black people are equal before God, but if black people come to our church and don't feel welcome, that's an issue. That's culture. You see, a church's doctrinal statement is super important, but just as important is the implications of that doctrine and the way the room feels. And here's where it gets really convicting for us, friends. Did you know the churches in the book of Revelation, in the first 3 chapters, Jesus writes a letter to 7 churches, and he rebukes almost all those churches, and he rebukes them not so much for doctrine. He rebukes almost all of them because of a poor culture. And I'd bet today, Christian, that you could spew off the right theological statements. You could describe and explain perhaps what the gospel is. But does the gospel pour out of you in the way you care for the poor, in the way you listen to people who have nothing to advantage you, the way you care about how the people in your life feel? the way people of other ethnicities feel around you. All those things, culture things, does it look like the gospel? You probably could pass a theological assessment, Christian, but could you pass a gospel culture assessment? And here's the responsibility of every pastor and every member of this church, is to create and to protect a culture that looks like the gospel of Jesus Christ. And here's why it's hard. It's hard because you and I, in us, are ingrained with bad culture. And we are bringing with us, either because of society's influence on us, or because of our upbringing, or because of whatever reason, we are bringing with us to this gathering and to this community a bad culture. You and I got a mess. That could be a culture that creates cliques in gospel community. We're in our small group in our homes, and we're just thinking about us and our friends, and we don't really care about somebody like Jose, who's here for the first time and coming from a broken background and needs someone to talk to him and pray for him. Now I'm good. We're talking to my friends about the Ravens. That's a bad culture. And you may be unknowingly bringing that with you to the gathering. You could be bringing a culture of mediocrity in your service to the church. Like, this doesn't really matter. You could be bringing a culture of ambivalence towards discipleship. When Jesus is like, I want you to make disciples, you're like, I'm good. I'll let the pastors do that. We all have some unhealthy cultural rhythms in our lives that we are bringing to this community. And it is our job to define what a healthy culture is and to defend it, to encourage it when we see it being done well, and to gently rebuke it when it goes against what the gospel says we should be. Or we will face the same rebuke Jesus gave many of the first century churches in the letter of Revelation. And so, what is the culture of RCC? Well, the culture starts with the vision. And our church's vision is where we're headed as an organization. It's the horizon in the distance that we are locking arms and heading towards. And did you know that the Bible has a vision? It's in Revelation chapter 21, the last page of your Bible. God says, all death will die, all tears will be wiped away, I will be their God, they will be my people, and sin is gone. And we dwell with our Creator forever. That is the great eschatological end times vision that we are working towards as Christians today. And if you're not a Christian, we want to invite you to join us towards that horizon. And our church's vision is a mini vision under that great vision working towards Revelation 21. What is that? Our church's vision is to be a church planting movement fueled by the gospel that reaches Baltimore City and cities around the world. Why do we want to be a church planting movement? What does that have to do with Revelation and God's vision? Well, because church planting is the most effective way to see people far from God come to know God and be a part of this great heaven that we will one day be a part of. If you look at the book of Acts, which is the next series we're going through starting next week, or a series we're calling Movement, you'll see that the entire book is about church planting. Like, what did the first Christians do? They planted churches all around the world. It's because God wants to gather people to himself through the starting of churches. And just practically, dozens of denominational studies have proven that the most effective way to reach people far from God is through the planting of churches in city centers. That's the most effective way to make a big impact in eternity. And so there is no more effective form of evangelism on the earth. And so we are all in to see God plant churches in Baltimore and around the world. And I just want you to imagine for a moment, just imagine within walking distance of every citizen of Baltimore City, a healthy church that's baptizing people like we just saw today regularly. A healthy church that's helping heal marriages, form sinners into saints, turn distant, estranged fathers into real dads who care for their kids and care for their wives. Imagine what would happen to this city if it was full of healthy churches changing the citizens of the city. That's what we want to see in Baltimore over the long term. Imagine our church sending out missionaries, like we're going to do later this year with one of our pastors, Pastor David, to places like Japan that has 126 million unreached people. Unreached means they've never heard the gospel and they never will hear the gospel unless someone goes. Imagine our little church that started 3.5 years ago sending our very best to the farthest corners of the earth to see those folks come to know Jesus, to even make a dent in that lostness. You see, that's what we want to do. Fill this city with churches and fill this world with churches that are actually giving hope to people who are broken, who need the gospel. And if our little brand new church is going to do that, it's going to take everyone. It's not the pastor show. This is movements are started from the bottom up, not the top down. Movements mean not just that we need pastors who are engaging and faithfully preach the scriptures. Movements mean that we need members who enter into the workforce, whatever it is you do for a living, as an ambassador for King Jesus, ready to share the gospel wherever God has sent you, ready to give of your income generously to the members of the church and to the vision of the church, using your vocation to bring life to the city. Like, imagine with me if every nurse that called RCC home went to Johns Hopkins Hospital as if Jesus Christ himself sent them to Johns Hopkins Hospital and Jesus was your boss. Imagine if every nurse acted as if Jesus was their patient. What do you think the quality of nursing and healthcare would be in Baltimore City if we approached healthcare in that manner? You see, that's our vision, is to see everyone, regardless of your vocation, going and serving as if you are doing it for Jesus. Imagine if every teacher in Baltimore City was pouring into their student as if Jesus himself were their student. Imagine the quality of teaching in our city. People might actually stay in this city and not leave into the county. Because you can have, I can actually get my kid an education here. It takes every member giving their entire life to whatever God has gifted you to do to build a movement that leads to the flourishing of the city and the reaching of the world with the gospel. And so whether you're a musician or artist, we want to encourage you to use your musicianship to sing songs and write songs that herald and show us the beauty of the gospel. If you're a graphic designer, help us to create great logos for the beauty of what we're doing. If you are an admin or executive type person, help us to organize all this chaos of all this growth we're seeing, because we're trying to figure it all out. If you're a stay-at-home mom, tell us how to raise kids, because we're all still trying to figure that out. Help us build a movement that changes the city. And my challenge to you is, if you are, whatever it is you're doing for a living right now, whatever your job is, you are a part of a movement. And it is either the movement of Satan or the movement of Jesus. If you're living for yourself, just worried about your salary package, worried about your legacy, worried about your comfort, I hate to break it to you, but you are contributing to the movement of Satan in the world, and Jesus will come and topple that kingdom and usurp it with his much more powerful and lasting kingdom. But if you are using your life and your resources and your energy to build up the movement of Jesus through the local church, you are building something that will matter for lives like Jose and for eternity. What are you giving your life to build? And I just want to declare to you that the members of RCC have declared we are on Team Jesus. We want to be a part of his movement. And there is not one role within this movement that doesn't matter. We are all contributing in our own unique way. And we're just not going to settle for doing our own little church game, putting on a great show. Everyone leaves and lives their life however they want to live. And we don't really actually change anything. And so that's why I'm really excited about this next series through Acts called Movement, because I want to challenge and encourage all of us to use our giftings to build this church planting movement that leads us to Revelation 21. And I just want to encourage you, we are seeing the beginnings of this movement. We're almost 4 years old, and we're already preparing to plant churches. It's pretty unheard of. We have tons of people coming in a pandemic. That's pretty unheard of. God is doing something here. We are seeing the beginnings. But will you give your life to help build this? Now, if you're going to ahead on this journey of being a part of a church planting movement with us, there are a few non-negotiables we need to discuss. And we call our non-negotiables values. This is who we are. If you're going to do life with us, you got to get on board with us on these things, or we're probably just not the church for you, because this is just us. And I love you enough to just be straight up with you rather than you be here for 6 months and find out later and just not be unhappy. And the reality is even if it's not communicated, every organization has values. Every person has values. If you go to a library and you want to, party it up and be really loud, what do you think is going to happen? The librarian is going to be quiet. Why? Because the library has values. They value a proper study environment more than they value you having a good time. Another example of this is Southwest Airlines. We have a guy who goes to our church who's a pilot for Southwest. So shout out Southwest. We're Team Southwest. If you're a Christian, you probably don't fly JetBlue or United. That's a little strong, but yeah. Oh, there he is. Hey. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I promise I do not normally do that. You can have a seat, bro. I'm just talking about how you're a pilot for Southwest and how Southwest is better than all the other airlines. Yeah, he said that's true. Yes. He probably had a red eye tonight, and listen, we love you. I promise I will not do that to anyone else, just him. Anyway, he works for Southwest, and one of Southwest's values is humor. And there was a takeoff of a flight, and one of the stewardesses for Southwest made a joke as they prepare for takeoff. You know how they make little jokes, like, put your seatbelt, And one of the customers, who was a loyal customer, had thousands of miles on our account, emailed the CEO and said, how dare one of your employees joke about something as serious as airline safety? That is not something to play around with. And the CEO, who so valued humor, responded with 3 words to this long email. We'll miss you. We'll miss you. Why would he do that? He did that because the value of humor is so ingrained in their organization that they would rather lose a customer than compromise on who they are. And there are some values given to us in the scriptures that are so essential to who we are that we're not going to change just to keep people. And so if you're going to join our church or recommit to our church, I just want to be straight up with you about these are our things. They're not new things. I wasn't in the lab, and I wasn't at a retreat with Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. Okay, well, how do I create a movement for, these are just old things shared in a new way to summarize who we are. 9 values. I'm going to briefly cover each of them today. Hopefully this gives you an idea of who we are. We are gospel-centered. We're gospel family. We're gospel equippers. We embody gospel mission, gospel excellence, gospel innovation. We have gospel honor, gospel humility, gospel hospitality. Let me start with number 1, which is probably the most important. We are a gospel-centered church. Look at 1 Corinthians 15. Paul says to the church in Corinth, for I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the 3rd day in accordance with the Scriptures. What is Paul saying here? Paul says, the thing that is of first importance for any Christian, any church, is the gospel. You're a sinner. Jesus died in your place. He resurrected, proving that his sacrifice was sufficient to save you from your sins. That's what we need to build our lives around and our church around. A lot of people think the gospel is just for non-Christians. But here at RCC, we believe the gospel is for every human being at every moment, at every day, in every situation. You see, for us, the gospel is not the diving board that launches us. The gospel is the swimming pool that we never get out of. The gospel is not the ABCs, it's the A to Z. Because we believe the gospel has the power to save us and the power to sanctify us. To be gospel-centered means that we are always going to focus on Jesus, who he is and what he has done, not on us and who we are and what we need to now do. The gospel means we're going to focus on declaring good news that gives you freedom rather than giving you good advice that might help your life. Practically, what does that mean? I'm never going to preach a sermon that's going to be like 5 steps to financial freedom. Because if you want that, go to YouTube. I'm going to declare from the scriptures the news of what Jesus did to save you from your sins and how that affects your real, actual life right now. Let me give you an example. If someone in our church is struggling with impatience with their child, impatience with their wife, impatience with another church member, whatever it is, to not be gospel-centered would be to say, okay, here's what the Bible says about patience. Here, let's open up to the Decalogue. Be patient, God says, so you better be patient. Here's some practical steps on how you can be patient. No, that's not what we do. To be gospel-centered means we say, you're not patient? Me too. Can I just list off a ton of examples of how I struggle with patience? Now, can I ask you to consider, how has Christ been patient with you? You remember that, drunken binge you went on when you were in your teenage years? You remember how Jesus was patient with you in that? He wooed you by his love back to the church? Think about, are you still over that habit of lying? No, you're not. Think about all the ways Jesus is being patient with you right now. Think about in 1 Peter it says God is waiting to bestow wrath on the world because he's patient, not wanting those to perish. Consider the patience of Christ. Has he been patient with you? He has? Now go do likewise. That's what it means to be gospel-centered. We always go to what Jesus has done and let it change what we do, rather than focusing on special tips on how to be better at life. And I just want to celebrate in 2021 that this gospel centrality that defines us has worked. We baptized 15 people in the last year. 15 people. Just from regularly declaring the gospel from the pulpit and in life together in community. We have 40 people in the last year who went through Foundations, which is a discipleship curriculum centered on what the gospel is. And many of those folks the 40 people who went through that curriculum were not Christians and became Christians through that process. And every member of our church has to know and be able to explain the gospel in order to be a member. And you might be like, I don't know if I could explain the gospel. That's okay, we'll teach it to you. You just got to be able to learn. We are gospel-centered, and that will never change. Second value, we're gospel family. We'll cover this verse in Acts 2 in a few weeks. It's a kind of a summary verse of what church is supposed to be like. Luke writes, and all who believed, this is the early church, were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belonging and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. Here's what you need to know about our church. We are not an event. We are not a building. RCC is a family. We don't just do ministry together. We're not just trying to accomplish a project together. We're doing life together. This means we are regularly in each other's homes, opening up each other's refrigerators, even eating each other's favorite chips. God forbid, but it happens. We believe the gospel flourishes in relationships. We believe the early church was a family, and therefore we want to be a family. And so we're about your holistic health because you're my brother, you're my sister. And no one drowns at RCC. Even if you are struggling and you're scheduled to serve this week, and you're like, I don't know if I can serve. Every single time we will say, don't. No one drowns at RCC. You're family. You matter more than this thing you're doing today. Gospel family means actually caring about one another. It means letting people use your car for free. It means letting other members stay in your home for free. It means buying homes next to other members because we want to reach our street. It means watching each other's kids, giving money to help another member who's in need. It means coming early and staying late. I don't know if you know this, but it's kind of weird. After service, people won't leave. I like have to turn the lights off, turn the heat off, like get out. You guys just won't stop hanging out with one another. It's because we're family. Now, the coming early part we need to work on, but the staying late, we're doing great. It's all right, we're family. You know how many people in this church have farted in front of me? A dangerous amount of people. That's family. And I forgive them. That's family. In 2021, we saw God grow our family in wonderful ways. You know, we added 50 members in 2021. We added more members this year than we had total in 2020. And that's 96 members total in a almost 4-year-old church. And 100% of our members are plugged into a gospel community, actually doing life with people in the church, not just showing up all the time. There's a counseling ministry we partner with, and one of the counselors in that ministry counsels many of the members in our church. We are pro-counseling here at RCC. I do a once-a-year counseling checkup. I encourage anyone who needs counseling to seek it. But one of the counselors we partner with reached out to one of our pastors and said, RCC is so unique. I've never had counseling, I don't know the term, clients who have been so supported by a church family. And this counselor was like, I want to come visit your church. How amazing is that? Because we're really family. I recognize that takes time for some of you, but if you're looking for a place where you can plug into a people and they can know you and you can know them, this is the place. But if you're looking for a church where you can show up once a month, stay on the periphery, not give and not get, then this is not the church for you. And I suggest you go somewhere else. We want to be your family. Third value, we're gospel equippers. Ephesians 4. I'll just summarize this. Paul says the role of the pastors and the apostles and the evangelists and the shepherds and teachers, really the role of the leaders of the church is verse 12, to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. What the heck does that mean? That means that it's our job as leaders to unleash you as members to meet the needs of the church and meet the needs of the city. You know, a lot of people come to church and think, okay, pastors do everything. No, the Bible says the pastors equip you to do everything. My job is to help you discover and deploy the God-given gift you have onto this world and onto this church. Do you know, if you're sitting in the chair right now, God has made you supernaturally good at something. If you're super friendly, great. You should be greeting on Sundays. If you can make a good latte, great. Serve in the coffee bar on Sundays. Hey, if you love dogs, walk dogs for other members. We actually have people who do that. Whatever it is you do, we want to equip you to serve. And if you, like I said earlier, if you're looking for a church where you just come and receive from the gifted guru of Jesus, Adam Muhtaseb, this is not the church for you. Because you're going to be very disappointed with my guru abilities. There's not much. It's pretty unimpressive. And my job is not to impress you and to wow you and entertain you for all the years you're here. My job is to help you get in the game, to sweat it out so that you can grow in your holiness and you can bless other people and you can grow in your confidence that God has literally gifted you to do something. Something that's encouraging in 2021 is that we have over 70 people in our church who regularly serve at RCC, either on the worship team, the hospitality team, or in RCC Kids, and in other various ministries. We have a bunch of people who are bought in, regularly serving. And so we're going to encourage everyone who calls this place home to use your gift, not to sit on the sidelines. We had 17 people in 2021 enter into RCC Institute, which is our leadership development program, where we take members and develop them into leaders in the church. And in 2022, this year, we have 22 people that will be in that program. We have 3 church planting residents who quit their jobs, raise support, and are preparing to plant churches and hope to be a part of this church planting movement that we're starting. And we added 2 elders and 5 deacons in 2021. So we are trying to get members in the game, leading, serving, and building up the church. Fourth value, we embody gospel mission. Matthew 28, Great Commission, one of the most important verses in the Bible. Jesus says, go and make disciples of all nations. Essentially what that means is that if you call this place home, we are going to challenge you to be on mission all the time. I am not the pastors are not the primary gospel proclaimer of the church. You guys are. Your job is not to just bring a bunch of people to me so I can tell them about the gospel. My job is to equip you to go share the gospel in the city. Because you will reach people and you will have networks and you have connections that I will never have. We are all called to go on mission. Now, what does this look like practically? The way we say this is we are ordinary people doing ordinary things with gospel intentionality. So I want to challenge you, if you call this place home, or if you're thinking about calling it home, to take whatever it is that you already like doing and infuse that with gospel intentionality. I like playing basketball. So I go play basketball, but I do it with gospel intentionality. I bring my lost neighbor with me, and I share the gospel on the drive there. I try to find someone at the gym that I don't know, get a friendship with them, and give them an invite card and say, hey, you should come to RCC sometime. I go out to dinner, and I give my waitress an invitation to come to my house for a hangout we're having, and we develop a relationship so I can then share the gospel with her. I just take the things I already like doing, and I try and let Jesus use that stuff. Evangelism doesn't always have to be door-to-door with people you don't know. Evangelism can be life on life with people you meet along the way. And we are challenging every single person who calls this place home to be on mission. Because God wants to use you to reach people. Did you notice my name was not mentioned at all in any of the baptisms? You know why? Because Nolan greeted Jose. David and Adam, David and Alyssa had them over at house. Things like that. We just had regular members sharing the gospel with people. That's God can use you in a story like that. Do you believe that? You can literally change someone's eternity if you will get in the game and share the gospel. Just love people. Pray for them. Invite them in. This city needs love. But are you on mission? Are you bold? Are you walking in step with the Spirit of God? We're going to challenge you to be on mission. We saw so many incredible mission stories this year. We saw people get saved. We sent out our first missionary to the Middle East, Ben Larson, who is now on mission in a country we cannot disclose. But he was probably he was the MVP of our Redemption City Church. Everyone loves Ben Larson. You probably got ice cream delivered to your house by him. He probably watched your kids. He was amazing. We sent him out. Why? We send our best on mission. We do hospitality nights within our gospel communities. It's a rhythm where a night where your group can just have people over for dinner or play a board game, and it's an environment you can bring somebody who's far from God and just hang out. And our mission has expanded our attendance on Sundays. Our attendance grew exponentially this year. From October in 2021 to right before Christmas in 2021, about a 3-month period, we averaged 190 people a Sunday, which is spectacular in a pandemic. I don't know how or why, but we are already one of the largest churches in the city of Baltimore. Our mission is expanding, our responsibility is expanding, and we need to steward this well by continuing to reach lost people and to equip you, like the value I mentioned earlier, to help lead. Fifth value, gospel excellence. I'm going to keep moving real quick. Daniel 6. Love this story. In Daniel 6, Daniel is held captive by a king, but he's working for this king, and this is what it says. Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Nebuchadnezzar, the guy that Jose mentioned, was a king, and Daniel was one of his captives, and Daniel was working for King Nebuchadnezzar, and he was doing such a good job that the king was like, I need to put you over my whole kingdom. You're so good at what you do. And that is the spirit we want for every Christian at RCC. I mean, we serve a God who is excellent in every way, don't we? I mean, he made bacon. That's pretty excellent. He made Mount Everest. He made Bonnie Bear. I love Bonnie Bear. He made the eye, the most complex organism in the world. Yet for some reason, when it comes to church, a lot of people don't value excellence in church. We think, like, we know if we don't bring value to our work, we'll get fired. If we don't bring value and invest in our relationship, we'll get broken up with. If we don't work on our bodies, we'll get out of shape. But we think we can come to the church gathering, and when we give and serve our giftings, it don't really matter that much. It's whatever. No, God has given us his best, his son, Jesus Christ. We can't help in thankfulness back to him to give him our best and our service to the church. So therefore, we spend more time preparing than we do performing. Every single Sunday I'm called to preach. I work like crazy to give God my best. I'm preaching as if Jesus Christ is sitting right there listening to my sermon. Because I love him and I love you. And we're going to challenge every single person that's a member to serve and serve in an excellent way, to bring value. Not because we need you, or not because we'll cut you out of the family if you're not good enough, but because we can't help but give Jesus our best. Let me also reiterate, this is a safe place to fail. This is a safe place to not be good at something, but we're going to keep challenging each other to continue to improve and be the best at what we can do. Some of the ways we did this in the last year is we're in the middle of trying to hire some positions, and we have a member who's head of HR of a company, and she helps set up interview weekends for these candidates that are applying. She's set up panels and scheduling. She's doing an excellent job of helping us interview. She's using her gift to add value. And I would encourage you, whatever it is your gift, to bring that same value to RCC. We also, to increase our excellence value, built a stage in last year. We put up TVs and speakers. We made a sound area in the back. And we hope in 2022 to renovate the first floor to make it more hospitable and welcoming to all people of the city. So we're trying to increase our excellence. Plus, our director of operations, Jen Yoon, she is our excellence extraordinaire. She's just helping us in every way with excellence. And another exciting thing is that we built out the RCC Kids space next door that we think is an excellent space and will continue to add value and help us reach more families and kids in our city. So we value gospel excellence. Sixth value, we value gospel innovation. I want to share this story briefly in 1 Samuel 14. If you're here in our series of 1 Samuel, you remember this story. It stuck with me so deeply. In 1 Samuel 14, the Philistine army, which is as big as the sand on the seashore, is attacking Israel, and Israel is shook. They're scared. So what do? They hide in caves. They forgot that God split the Red Sea to save them from Egypt. They forgot that God provided Krispy Kreme from the sky to feed them. They forgot that God was the provider and protector of them. And so they're hiding. And Jonathan, the king's son, looks at this army of thousands and thousands, and he takes them on by himself. He comes up with an innovative new strategy. 1 on 25,000. And he wins somehow. This army's in full retreat from one guy. And we so badly want that to be the spirit of our church. We really do believe God is still alive. God is still moving. And if we trust him and have big faith, he shows up. We're not afraid to try new things and fail. We're not afraid to say, God, if you don't show up, we're screwed. We think if we're comfortable, something's wrong. And if we're begging God on our knees, please come through, we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And we saw that happen in 2021. In 2020 and 2021, this building we were renting on Sunday mornings, and the owner said he'd sell it to us for $2 million. Great, we had $100,000. You know what? We looked at Jonathan, we looked at how big God is, and we said, God, we trust that you'll provide everything we need. And we were able to buy this building. We closed on it early in 2021. God shows up and provides. We raised over $800,000 in 2021 alone. $800,000 towards this building. He really does show up. Now, what does that mean practically too? Sure, we have success stories like owning this building, but we also have some failures. Being innovative means we'll try new things and it won't go great. Last year, we tried to do a co-working space on the second floor. We let a guy come and run a co-working space where people can come rent the space, and it just wasn't taking off. We didn't have a lot of people wanting to do it. And it was a flop. And it was a bummer. But you know what? God just said no, and we were okay. We dusted ourselves off, and we adjusted. Being innovative means we trust God, we take big risks, and we let the chips fall where they may, and we know God is working through it all. And we had an incredible year. We're not going to play it safe. If you're looking for a church that just pays the bills, plays it safe, keeps it easy, keeps you comfortable, you're going to be miserable here. But if you want to be challenged, if you want to be a part of what God's doing in the city and the world, if you want to be stretched and grown into somebody who looks more like Christ, keep coming to RCC. Last three I'm going to cover really briefly. These are kind of attitudes we embody as we do all these things. We have gospel honor. Romans 12:10 is kind of a clutch verse for us. It says, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. We believe that each person in RCC is in a competition to out-honor one another. What that means is we often defer credit and we absorb blame. In the same way Jesus absorbed our sin and deferred to us his righteousness. So if we are a people of honor, bitterness does not fly here. Slander is not okay here. We do not gossip about one another here. We honor one another. We care way too much to let those types of characteristics poison the culture of our church and divide it. So if you hear gossip or you hear slander or you hear someone complaining about another member, we shut that down right away and say, you need to talk to them right now. Because we want unity. We want to honor one another. Honor simply just means valuing someone else more than you value yourself. It's hard to put numbers around honor, but I think you'll find that this is a place of honor. And we strive to be that. Eighth value is gospel humility. 1 Corinthians 1:26-31. If you get nothing else, this is a great verse for you to get today. For consider your calling, Paul says. Not many of you were wise, according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. And because of him, you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that as it is written, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. You want to know the Adam Muhtaseb translation of this? You ain't all that. This is literally saying, you know why God chose you? Because you're kind of stupid. You know why God chose you? Because you couldn't pull it together yourself. You know why God chose you? Because you're pretty weak. That's why God chose you. You can't read that verse and swagger. You read this verse and say, I literally have nothing to brag about. The only reason I'm here is because God's miraculous intervention in my life. We are all prodigal sons and daughters, deserving of the pigsty, but have been given an eternal celebration and a party in our Father's home. God chose us simply because we are not impressive, but because we are weak, so that he could display his power. And so because of that, here at RCC, when someone criticizes us, we try and say, you have no idea how sinful I really am. You're just scratching the surface of it. It's worse than you even know. We recognize we're more sinful than we appear. We're never too skilled to serve people because we know where we came from. If serving is beneath us, we know leadership is beyond us. And we recognize here that our own sinfulness is our greatest threat. No one is beyond a moral failure. No one is beyond running away from Jesus. We all need daily dependence. And so this means, gospel humility means embracing people who are different than you. That's what humility does. It means listening to ideas that you may not agree with right away. It means sitting front row on a Sunday gathering saying, I want to hear from God's word this morning. And my hope and our prayer, I just want to say, it has been a joy to see not just the honor, but the humility of Redemption City Church. One of our elders this morning was wiping away the ice with salt. You guys don't need to, but you call me Pastor Adam. Just because you humbly want to honor me. This is a humble church that's willing to walk dogs, clean messes, set up chairs, do the little things because we recognize none of us should even be here. You know why? I know this. First of all, I'm the pastor, one of the pastors, and I should be a Muslim right now. I grew up in a Muslim family. There's no reason I should be a pastor of this church. And it's our humility that leads us to say, we were weak, but God, you made us strong for your glory. We're a humble people. Last value is gospel hospitality. Romans 15 says, welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. You ever think about that verse? Jesus says, welcome other people the same way I welcome you. That's a pretty good welcome. Jesus loves taking unlovely people and turning them into his family. We welcome others the same way Christ has welcomed us to his table. And so, hospitality means we smile when we see one another. Hospitality means we're positive towards one another. We say we don't have to be here, we get to be here. Hospitality means we display the gospel in the way we treat those who visit our community. Hospitality means that even though there's a homeless person that came into our building during the snow last week, we give them coffee, we give them a warm place to sit, and we ask them about their life, even though they have nothing, it seems, to offer us, financially or practically. Hospitality means we treat people the way Jesus treated us, because when we were smelly, he came and hugged us, and some of his stank rubbed off on him. Hospitality means if someone is alone here at RCC, it's an emergency. Because it could be someone like Jose who's broken and needs help. And he's just a few conversations away from having his life changed. But are you looking to be hospitable? It means seeing your home not as a refuge or the man cave. It means seeing your home as a tool for gospel ministry. It's seeing your dinner table as a means by which you want to display the gospel of Jesus Christ. By inviting people that, really, those two people are having dinner together? That's interesting. We saw a lot of examples of this in 2021. I think one of the best was the Salam Center event we did in December of last year when we had over 100 Muslim refugees in our building. We gave them gifts, we fed them food, and many of them heard the gospel for the first time right where you're sitting. There was a professional writer who came to write a story about that event, and I just want to read a little bit of what she said about our hospitality. She said, I'm a writer and I love telling stories of how God is working in and through local churches. So I came to do this for the organization I work for. But I was unprepared for how God would minister to my own heart through what he allowed me to witness. As I entered your building for the first time, it was bustling with activity by a team of volunteers preparing the space and, yes, setting up chairs. As views of your beautiful city streamed in from the windows, people carried out their tasks and shared with me their excitement for the opportunity to minister to some of Baltimore's most vulnerable citizens. I learned that about 100 refugees would gather in your building to hear the gospel, share a meal, and receive presents for their families. RCC's primary role was that of host, but was hopeful that this event would launch more opportunities for members to serve this marginalized community. At 11 a.m. on Saturday, December 11th, your building began to fill with people from the farthest corners of the world, literally the farthest corners of the world. People who look, speak, and think, and live differently than you. People with whom the world would say you have nothing in common, and therefore each group should just keep to their own kind, but that is not the way of Christ. He came to tear down barriers and to unite what the world attempts to divide. He teaches us to look past what is easily seen and look deeper into the unseen. He says in Ephesians 2:12-13, remember that you were at that time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. She says, we have much in common with refugees. We were once strangers and aliens too. We were on the outside until we were brought in by Christ. And as his people, we get to participate in the eternally significant work of bringing others into his kingdom. when we work together with people of goodwill to bring the thrilling hope of the gospel so the weary world may rejoice. God is glorified and his kingdom advances on earth. God is building his kingdom with people from all tribes, tongues, and nations. Seeing your church minister to these people was a great encouragement to me and a divine blessing to them. These are dark times for many, and especially for overlooked and underserved communities. But the light of Christ shines brightly through the trusted presence of local churches, specifically Redemption City Church. Your neighbors need hope and help this Christmas season, and RCC is divinely placed and purposed to meet this need with good news and great generosity. So press on in your work, dear saints. Never grow weary of doing good, and draw strength from Jesus himself. This is his work and his church. He cares about your city, and he is drawing many to himself with the proclamation of his word and the deeds of his people. His kingdom is near, and never more so than when his people image his compassion for the vulnerable. God is creating a beautiful, redemptive story for Baltimore, and your church is an essential part of it. Steward your story well, for the good of your city and for the glory of God. Amen. And I just want to say to the over 50 of you that showed up at that event, to exemplify hospitality to the refugee and those who fled ISIS and the Taliban in Afghanistan, who were here that that Saturday morning. Thank you for exemplifying your hospitality that day and every day. And we have a church that's really a family, that really honors one another, that really is humble, and really exemplifies hospitality. And I just want to thank you. And so if you are here this morning and you are not a part of our church family, this is a little bit of summary of who we are. And if you're interested in joining this movement with these values, you can do so by going to RCC 101 and learning more about what it means to be a member of this church. It's not a commitment to be a member, it's just an intro class to cover what that looks like. If you want to sign up to go to RCC 101, you can sign up with those iPads in the back, or on your connection card, you can just simply write membership and turn it at the table, and we will follow up with you. We would love to see you join our church family. And let me just encourage you, if you're visiting from out of town, or you just listen to all this and you're like, this is not the church for me, that's okay. It doesn't need to be. Join a church and go all in with them. And if it's with us, go to RCC 101. If you are a member of RCC, we ask every member to renew their covenant. Say, we're in this again for this year. On your seat is a paper that summarizes some of the covenant. Obviously, it's not the covenant, but it summarizes the categories. I want to ask every member of this church during the next song that we play to consider, am I going to renew my covenant with RCC? You can sign at the bottom and turn it at the table in the back. If you would like some time to think about it, or you want to look at the exact membership covenant, it will be emailed to you this week, or you can find it on our church website, rccbaltimore.org/membership, and look at that. I want to encourage you to grab your covenant as a family and pray over it together and ask yourself, how did we do this last year at honoring our covenant commitments that we made to our church family? And look ahead, what do we need to change this year as a family to better honor these commitments, to better shine the light of the gospel in our city? So everyone has an action step. If you're not a member, go to RCC 101 or join a church where you can live out some of these values. If you are a member, sign your covenant and turn it in the table in the back, or you can turn it in at a later Sunday. And let's all jump into this movement that Jesus is building that leads us to the glory of Revelation chapter 21. Would you pray with me? Lord Jesus, I recognize that covering 9 values can perhaps maybe be discouraging for some folks here this morning. Someone here may be listening and think, wow, I'm not very hospitable. I stink. Or I'm not very humble. Wow, I have a lot of work to do. I'm not on mission. That's a problem. And it can be discouraging. And Lord, I just stand here as one of the pastors recognizing I don't perfectly embody these values all the time. And I need people to hold me accountable and encourage me when I'm struggling. And Lord, we just want to praise you and thank you for the gospel of Jesus Christ that is for broken people that do not measure up. We know you've set a standard that we do not meet. And we thank you that you sent a Savior who met the standard for us. And God, help us by Jesus' power and the Spirit's power to now embody these values so we can be better citizens of your kingdom. Help us to be family when we don't feel like it. Help us to be on mission when we don't feel like it. Help us to be equippers that help others serve and plug into the church. Help us to model hospitality and honor and humility and these other values when on our own we would naturally not do that. We need your help to do these things. And may you bless us in 2022 far greater than you did in 2021. May we get more of you. Maybe we look more like you. And may we see many more people come to Jesus this upcoming year. We pray this in your name. Amen.